The alien princess was stunned when I chose her as my life partner. The transport shuttle shook violently as it broke through the atmosphere of Zephyria Prime. I gripped the metal bench beneath me, watching through the small porthole as alien cities sprawled across the purple landscape below. 3 months ago, I was just Marcus Chen, a maintenance engineer on a deep space mining platform. Now I was humanity's first cultural exchange representative to the Zephyrian Empire. The job posting had seemed too good to be true. Seeking qualified human for diplomatic cultural exchange program, competitive compensation, extended travel opportunities. What they didn't mention was that I'd be the only human on a planet of 8 billion aliens, or that the Zephyrians looked like walking crystals with way too many eyes. The shuttle touched down with a bone-jarring thud. Through the hiss of equalizing atmosphere, I heard voices speaking in rapid Zephyrian clicks and whistles. My translation implant buzzed against my skull, converting their words into something I could understand. "The human has arrived," someone said. "Prepare the ceremonial chamber." The airlock cycled open, and I stepped onto Zephyrian soil for the first time. The gravity was lighter than Earth's, making each step feel like I might bounce away. The air tasted metallic and sharp, full of minerals I couldn't identify. Before me stood a delegation of Zephyrians, their crystalline bodies catching the light of their blue sun and throwing rainbows across the landing pad. The tallest among them stepped forward. According to my briefing materials, this was High Chancellor Vexandra, the Zephyrian equivalent of a foreign minister. Her body was composed of what looked like living diamond, with geometric patterns that shifted and changed as she moved. Multiple eyes, each the size of my fist, focused on me from different angles. "Welcome, human Marcus," she said, her voice a melodious chiming sound. "We are honored by your presence on our world." I bowed slightly, trying to remember the protocols I'd studied during the journey. "Thank you, High Chancellor. I'm grateful for this opportunity to learn about your culture." "Indeed. You will find our ways different from your own." Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I couldn't place what. "Come. The royal palace awaits." The journey through the capital city was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Buildings rose like natural crystal formations, their surfaces alive with flowing patterns of light. Zephyrians moved through the streets in graceful gliding motions, their bodies reflecting and refracting light in mesmerizing displays. Some stopped to stare at me, their multiple eyes tracking my movement with obvious curiosity. The royal palace dominated the city center, a massive structure that seemed to be carved from a single enormous gem. As our transport approached the main entrance, I caught my first glimpse of the royal guards. They were larger than civilian Zephyrians, their crystalline bodies darker and more angular, designed for combat rather than beauty. Inside the palace, High Chancellor Vexandra led me through corridors filled with impossible architectural features. Stairs spiraled in directions that shouldn't exist, and doorways opened onto rooms that seemed larger inside than outside. My human brain struggled to process the geometry. "Your quarters have been prepared," Vexandra explained as we walked. "Tomorrow you will begin your cultural observations. But tonight you are invited to attend the selection ceremony." "Selection ceremony?" I asked. Vexandra's eyes shifted, focusing on different points around me. "Princess Liarana reaches maturity today. According to our laws, she must choose a life partner from among the eligible candidates. It is a great honor to witness such an event." We stopped before a set of massive crystal doors. Guards flanked either side, their weapon appendages glinting in the ambient light. Beyond the doors, I could hear the sound of thousands of voices in conversation. "I should mention," Vexandra said, her tone becoming more formal, "that as an honored guest, you will be presented to the princess along with the other candidates. This is merely ceremonial, you understand. A human could never be selected as a life partner to Zephyrian royalty. The way she said it sparked something rebellious in my chest. Back home, I'd always been the guy who fixed things others said couldn't be fixed. I'd never backed down from a challenge, even when the odds were impossible. I understand, I said simply. The crystal doors opened, revealing a vast ceremonial chamber filled with hundreds of Zephyrians. The ceiling soared high overhead, covered in what looked like living constellations that pulsed and shifted in rhythm with the crowd's excitement. At the center of the chamber, on a raised platform of pure white crystal, stood Princess Lyanna. Even among the beautiful Zephyrians, she was extraordinary. Her crystalline body was smaller and more delicate than the others, composed of what appeared to be living opal. Colors flowed across her surface in waves of pink, blue, and gold. Her eyes, unlike the harsh geometric shapes of other Zephyrians, were soft and almost round, reminding me of gemstones. As I was led to my position among the other candidates, I noticed something that made my heart race. Princess Lyanna looked sad. Despite the celebration around her, despite the honor of the ceremony, her beautiful opal colors were muted, almost gray. Her eyes moved listlessly across the crowd of suitors, showing no interest or excitement. The ceremony began with a series of formal presentations. High Chancellor Vexandra announced each candidate, listing their achievements and qualifications. There were military commanders with battle-scarred crystal armor, wealthy merchants whose bodies gleamed with precious metal inlays, and scholars whose intricate patterns showed their vast knowledge. Each candidate stepped forward when called, displaying their finest qualities for the princess's consideration. Some demonstrated combat prowess, shattering practice targets with energy blasts. Others showed off artistic abilities, creating beautiful light displays or musical harmonies. The wealthy ones simply stood and let their riches speak for themselves. When my name was called, the chamber fell completely silent. Thousands of eyes turned to focus on me as I stepped forward. I was acutely aware of how different I looked compared to everyone else. Soft flesh and bone instead of living crystal. Single eyes instead of multiple, crude clothing instead of natural armor. Princess Lyanna, I said, my voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. I am Marcus Chen of Earth. I have no crystal armor to show you, no energy weapons to demonstrate. I cannot create beautiful light displays or sing in harmonious frequencies. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some Zephyrians shifted their colors to darker hues, showing disapproval. But Princess Lyanna's eyes focused entirely on me for the first time since the ceremony began. What I can offer, I continued, is something different. I can offer you a choice that isn't expected, a future that isn't predetermined. I can offer you the chance to explore the universe beyond this crystal palace, to see wonders that exist beyond your world. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Such direct speech to royalty was apparently unprecedented. High Chancellor Vexandra's colors shifted to angry red patterns, and the guards moved closer to the platform. But Princess Lyanna did something unexpected. For the first time since I'd seen her, her colors brightened. Waves of brilliant gold and electric blue flowed across her opal surface. She looked directly at me with an expression I somehow recognized despite our vast differences. Curiosity. Human Marcus, she said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. You speak of choices and exploration. What makes you believe I desire such things? I thought about her sadness. About the gray colors that had dominated her appearance when she thought no one was paying attention. Because you're not happy here, I said honestly. Despite all the luxury, despite all the honor, despite all the candidates with their impressive displays, you look like someone trapped in a beautiful cage. The silence that followed my words was deafening. I could feel the anger radiating from the other candidates and the royal court. I had just insulted the very foundation of Zephyrian royal tradition. Princess Liranna studied me for a long moment. Then slowly she stepped down from her platform. The crowd parted before her as she walked directly toward me. When she reached the spot where I stood, she stopped just close enough that I could see my reflection in her crystalline surface. "Tell me about your world," she said quietly. For the next hour, I spoke about Earth. I told her about oceans that stretched beyond the horizon, about mountains that pierced the clouds, about forests filled with living creatures that weren't made of crystal or metal. I described the feeling of rain on skin, the warmth of sunlight, the simple pleasure of walking barefoot through grass. As I spoke, Princess Liranna's colors grew brighter and more vibrant. Her questions became more frequent and excited. She wanted to know about human emotions, about the way we formed relationships without formal ceremonies, about our art and music and literature. The other candidates grew increasingly restless. Some began making aggressive posturing displays, trying to draw the princess's attention back to them, but she ignored them completely. Her focus entirely on my stories of a world unlike anything she'd ever imagined. When the formal question period ended, Princess Liranna returned to her platform. The High Chancellor stepped forward to begin the selection process, clearly expecting the princess to choose one of the traditional candidates. "Princess Liranna," Vexandra announced, "you have heard from all the candidates. The time has come for you to make your choice." The princess looked out over the assembled crowd. Her eyes moved across the military commanders, the wealthy merchants, the accomplished scholars. Each one stood proudly, confident in their qualifications and certain of their worthiness. Then her gaze found mine. "I choose the human," she said clearly. The chamber exploded into chaos. Shouts of outrage echoed off the crystal walls. Several candidates began aggressive displays, their colors shifting to threatening patterns. The royal guards moved into defensive positions around the platform. High Chancellor Vexandra's entire body flashed bright red. "Princess, this is impossible! A human cannot be chosen as a royal life partner. The laws, the traditions, the very nature of our society forbids it." Princess Liranna stood taller, her opal surface now blazing with confident colors. "The law states that I may choose any being I deem worthy from among those presented to me. Human Marcus was presented as a candidate. I choose him." "But Princess," Vexandra stammered, "the genetic compatibility, the cultural differences, the impossibility of—" "Are you questioning my judgment, High Chancellor?" Princess Liranna's voice carried an authority I hadn't heard before. Despite her youth, she was still royalty, and her word carried the weight of law. Vexandra's colors shifted to submissive blues and purples. "Of course not, Princess. But perhaps you need time to consider the implications of such a choice." "I have considered them," the princess replied firmly. "For cycles upon cycles, I have watched as potential partners were paraded before me, each one the same as the last, each one offering me a future exactly like the present, locked in traditions that never change. The human offers something different. He offers growth, exploration, the possibility of becoming something more than what I am today." She turned to look directly at me again. "Human Marcus, do you accept the honor of being chosen as my life partner?" Every instinct told me this was insane. I was a maintenance engineer from a mining platform, not royalty. I knew nothing about Zephyrian culture beyond what I'd read in briefing documents. The idea of being married to an alien princess was so far outside my experience that I couldn't even process it properly. But looking at her, seeing the hope and excitement in her crystalline features, remembering the sadness I'd witnessed earlier, I knew there was only one answer I could give. "Yes," I said. "I accept." The chaos in the chamber reached a new level. Several candidates began demanding immediate combat trials. Others called for the princess to be declared mentally unfit. The High Chancellor looked like she might shatter from stress, but Princess Liranna simply smiled. an expression that somehow translated perfectly despite our different physiology. Her colors settled into a pattern of contentment I hadn't seen from her before, and for the first time since arriving on Zephyria Prime, I felt like I might have made the right choice. What I didn't know was that my real challenges were just beginning. The Alien Princess Story, second part. The morning after the selection ceremony, I woke up in my guest quarters to the sound of angry voices echoing through the crystal corridors. My translation implant buzzed constantly, picking up fragments of heated conversations from throughout the palace. Unacceptable. Tradition demands. Genetic impossibility. Disgrace to the royal bloodline. I sat up on the strange, crystalline sleeping surface that the Zephyrians had provided, rubbing my eyes and trying to process what I'd gotten myself into. Yesterday seemed like a dream. But the formal robes hanging on my wall and the ceremonial marriage bracelet on my wrist confirmed it was all real. A soft, chiming sound announced someone at my door. When I opened it, I found Princess Liranna standing in the hallway, but she looked different than she had during the ceremony. Her usual bright opal colors were dim and muted, and she kept glancing nervously over her shoulder. "Marcus," she said quietly, "we need to talk." She led me through a maze of service corridors I hadn't known existed, away from the main palace areas where we might be overheard. We ended up in what appeared to be a private garden, though it was unlike any garden I'd ever seen. Instead of plants, crystalline formations grew from the ground in organic shapes, creating a forest of living gems that sang in harmony as the wind passed through them. "I should apologize," Liranna said once we were alone. "I may have made things difficult for you." "What do you mean?" I asked, though I had a feeling I already knew. "The Royal Council met through the night. They're demanding that the selection be declared invalid. Some are calling for you to be expelled from the planet immediately." Her colors shifted to worried grays and blues. "Others are suggesting more permanent solutions." The way she said it sent a chill down my spine. "They want to kill me?" "Not officially, of course. But accidents happen to inconvenient humans far from home." She moved closer, her crystalline surface catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the ground. "Marcus, I need you to understand what choosing me means. It's not just about marriage or royal ceremonies. In Zephyrian culture, life partners share more than just a home." "What do you mean?" "We share consciousness," she explained. "When two Zephyrians bond as life partners, their crystal matrices merge partially. We become able to share thoughts, emotions, even memories. It's how we know that our partnerships will last, because deception becomes impossible." I stared at her in shock. "You're talking about telepathy?" "More than that. True mental bonding. But the process has never been attempted between a Zephyrian and an alien species. The Council believes it's impossible, that any attempt would result in madness or death for both of us." "And what do you believe?" Liranna was quiet for a long moment, her colors shifting through patterns I was beginning to recognize as deep thought. "I believe that consciousness is more flexible than we assume. Your human mind works so differently from ours. Where we think in crystal lattice patterns, you think in flowing connections. Where we process information in geometric structures, you create meaning through stories and emotions." "That doesn't sound like we're compatible." "Or it means we could create something entirely new," she said, her colors brightening slightly. "Marcus, I've spent my whole life surrounded by minds that think exactly like mine. Every conversation, every interaction follows predictable patterns. When I listen to you speak, when I try to understand how your thoughts work, I feel like I'm discovering new colors that I've never seen before." Before I could respond, a harsh chiming sound echoed across the garden. Liranna's colors immediately shifted to alarm patterns. "The Royal Council summons," she said grimly. "They want to meet with both of us." The council chamber was the most intimidating room I'd encountered in the palace. 12 ancient Zephyrians sat in a semicircle, their crystalline bodies bearing the scars and geometric complexity that came with extreme age. The oldest among them, Council Elder Zexthane, was so ancient that parts of his crystal structure had actually fossilized. High Chancellor Vexandra stood beside the Elder's chair, her colors radiating barely contained anger. As Lyr'ana and I entered, the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "Princess Lyr'ana," Elder Zexthane began, his voice like grinding stone, "you have created an unprecedented crisis. Your selection of this human has thrown our entire social structure into chaos." "With respect, Elder," Lyr'ana replied, her voice steady despite the obvious pressure. "The selection ceremony proceeded according to traditional law. I chose from among the candidates presented to me." "The law assumes a minimum standard of compatibility," another council member interjected. "No one anticipated that you would choose a being genetically and mentally incompatible with our species." Elder Zexthane raised a crystalline appendage for silence. "Human Marcus," he said, turning those ancient eyes toward me. "Do you understand the magnitude of what you have attempted? Life bonding is not simply a marriage ceremony. It is a fundamental joining of consciousness that shapes both partners for the remainder of their existence." "I'm beginning to understand that," I replied honestly. "But I also understand that Princess Lyr'ana deserves the right to make her own choices about her future." "Her choices affect more than just herself," Vexandra snapped. "She is heir to the Crystal Throne. Her life partner will one day help rule an empire spanning dozens of star systems. We cannot allow an untested alien to hold such power." "Then test me," I said, the words coming out before I'd fully thought them through. The chamber fell silent. 12 pairs of ancient eyes focused on me with laser intensity. "What did you say?" Elder Zexthane asked. I took a deep breath, drawing on every ounce of confidence I'd ever possessed. "You say I'm untested. Then test me. Whatever trials or challenges you use to determine worthiness for royal partnerships, I'll undergo them." "Impossible," Vexandra said immediately. "The trials are designed for Zephyrian physiology and psychology. A human could not possibly..." "Could not possibly what?" I interrupted, my frustration finally boiling over. "Could not possibly be brave enough, smart enough, dedicated enough? You've already decided I'm inadequate without giving me a chance to prove otherwise." Council Elder Zexthane's colors shifted to what I was learning indicated deep consideration. "Human Marcus, the trials you speak of are not games. They test every aspect of a being's worthiness. Physical capability, mental strength, emotional stability, and spiritual depth. Many Zephyrian candidates do not survive them. I understand the risks." "Do you?" another council member asked. "The trial of crystal resonance requires you to harmonize with the planetary consciousness itself. No non-Zephyrian has ever achieved resonance. The failure typically results in madness." "The trial of void walking," added another, "requires you to survive in the empty spaces between dimensions. Zephyrian crystal bodies can withstand the entropic forces involved. Organic matter typically disintegrates within moments." Lyr'ana stepped forward, her colors showing deep concern. "Marcus, you don't have to do this. We can find another way." I looked at her, this beautiful alien princess who had chosen me despite having every reason not to. "No," I said firmly. "If we're going to do this, if we're going to be partners, then I want everyone to know that I earned the right to stand beside you." Elder Zexthane was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke. "Very well, Human Marcus, but understand that by accepting the trials, you forfeit any protection your status as a diplomatic guest might have provided. If you fail, if you die in the attempt, it will be considered a noble sacrifice rather than a tragedy." "I accept those terms." "And Princess Lyr'ana," the elder continued, If the human fails the trials, you will be required to choose another partner from the traditional candidates. No further delays or unconventional selections will be permitted. Liranna's colors flickered through rapid patterns that I read as internal conflict. Finally, she nodded. I accept those terms as well. Then let the trials begin, Elder Zexthane declared. The first trial, the trial of physical mastery, took place in an arena deep beneath the palace. As I stood on the crystalline floor, wearing the special suit the Zephyrians had provided to keep me alive in their hostile environment, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. The trial involved navigating an obstacle course that shifted and changed as I moved through it. Crystal spires erupted from the ground without warning. Energy barriers appeared and disappeared randomly. Gravity shifted direction unexpectedly, and the floor itself tried to entrap me with suddenly appearing quicksand-like substances. What the Zephyrians hadn't counted on was human adaptability. Where their candidates relied on predetermined strategies and crystalline strength, I used improvisation and flexibility. When a crystal spire blocked my path, I didn't try to break through it. I found a way around it. When gravity shifted, I didn't fight it. I used the momentum to reach areas that would otherwise be inaccessible. After 3 exhausting hours, I reached the end of the course. The watching Zephyrians were silent, their colors muted with what I was beginning to recognize as surprise. The second trial, the trial of mental fortitude, was more challenging. I was placed in a sensory deprivation chamber and subjected to psychological pressures designed to break my will. Illusions played with my perceptions, making me question what was real and what wasn't. False memories were implanted and then suddenly removed, leaving me disoriented and confused. But humans, I discovered, had an advantage here too. Our brains are naturally chaotic compared to the ordered crystal matrices of Zephyrian minds. The psychological attacks that would devastate a structured consciousness simply couldn't find purchase in my more fluid thought patterns. I emerged from the trial tired but intact, much to the Council's obvious amazement. The third trial, however, was where things went wrong. The trial of crystal resonance required me to connect with the planetary consciousness of Zephyria Prime itself. I was taken to a deep underground chamber where enormous crystal formations stretched from floor to ceiling. The air hummed with energy that made my teeth ache and my bones vibrate. "Place your hands on the resonance crystal," instructed the trial master, an ancient Zephyrian whose body had grown into the chamber walls over centuries of meditation. "Open your mind to the consciousness of the planet itself." I approached the massive crystal formation at the center of the chamber. It was beautiful and terrifying, pulsing with a life force that seemed older than civilization itself. As I placed my hands on its surface, I felt an immediate shock of alien awareness. The planetary consciousness was vast beyond comprehension. It was the combined mental energy of every Zephyrian who had ever lived, their thoughts and memories crystallized into the planet's structure itself. As I tried to connect with it, I felt my human mind being overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the experience. But something unexpected happened. Instead of being destroyed by the contact, my mind began to adapt. The neural plasticity that made humans so good at learning new skills kicked in, allowing my brain to process the alien consciousness in ways that even surprised me. Suddenly, I wasn't just connecting with the planetary consciousness. I was showing it something it had never experienced before. Through my human perspective, the ancient crystal mind was seeing concepts like innovation, rebellion, and individual creativity for the first time. The crystal formations around me began to glow brighter than they ever had before. New patterns appeared in their structure, geometric forms that had never existed in Zephyrian architecture. The trial master's eyes went wide with shock. "Impossible," he whispered. "The planetary consciousness is learning. It's changing." When I finally removed my hands from the crystal, the entire chamber had been transformed. Where before there had been rigid geometric patterns, now there were flowing organic curves mixed with crystal precision. It was as if human creativity had been merged with Zephyrian order to create something entirely new. Word of what happened in the resonance chamber spread through the palace within hours. By the time Anna and I were summoned before the Royal Council again, crowds of Zephyrians had gathered outside, their colors shifting through patterns I'd never seen before. Elder Zexthane looked at me with something that might have been respect. "Human Marcus, you have accomplished something that was believed impossible. You have not only survived the trials, but you have changed them. The planetary consciousness itself has been altered by contact with your mind." "Does that mean I've passed?" I asked. "It means," the elder replied slowly, "that we are in uncharted territory. The trials were designed to test compatibility with our existing society. You have demonstrated that you can do something far more significant. You can help our society evolve." High Chancellor Vexandra stepped forward, her colors still showing resistance but much muted from before. "The trials have been completed successfully. By ancient law, human Marcus has proven his worthiness to bond with Princess Anna." Anna's colors blazed with joy and relief. "Then we may proceed with the bonding ceremony?" Elder Zexthane nodded slowly. "You may. But understand that this bonding will be unlike any that has come before. We cannot predict what will happen when human and Zephyrian consciousness merge. You both may emerge from the process fundamentally changed." I looked at Anna. This incredible being who had chosen to risk everything for the chance at something different. "Are you ready for that?" Her colors settled into patterns of determination and love. "I've been ready since the moment I chose you." But as we prepared for the bonding ceremony, neither of us realized that our trials were far from over. In the deep spaces between star systems, ancient enemies of the Zephyrian Empire had been watching our unusual partnership with great interest, and they were already making plans to use our unprecedented bond for their own dark purposes. The Alien Princess Story. Third part. The bonding ceremony was set to take place at dawn in the Chamber of Eternal Light, the most sacred space in the Zephyrian royal palace. As I prepared for what would essentially remake my consciousness, I tried to calm my racing heart and focus on what Anna had taught me about the process. "The bonding happens in stages," she explained as her attendants helped us both prepare. "First, our surface thoughts will merge. You'll be able to sense my emotions and basic intentions, and I'll sense yours. Then, if our minds are compatible, the connection will deepen until we share not just thoughts, but the very structure of consciousness itself. And if we're not compatible?" Her colors dimmed slightly. "Then the feedback could damage both our minds permanently. Marcus, even now you can still choose to withdraw. No one would think less of you." I took her crystalline hand in my human one, marveling again at how right it felt despite our vast differences. "I'm not going anywhere." The Chamber of Eternal Light was breathtaking. Massive crystal formations focused the light of Zephyria's blue sun into beams that created a complex pattern on the floor. Ancient Zephyrian symbols glowed with their own inner light, telling the story of every royal bonding ceremony that had ever taken place here. The Royal Council had assembled as witnesses, along with what seemed like half the palace staff. Despite the early hour, excitement and nervousness filled the air. Everyone knew they were about to witness something unprecedented in Zephyrian history. Elder Zexthane stood at the center of the chamber beside the bonding crystal, a formation that seemed to contain actual living light. "Princess Anna, human Marcus, approach the bonding crystal and join your hands upon its surface." We stepped forward together, and I felt the crystal's energy humming through my bones even before we touched it. When we placed our joined hands on the crystal's surface, the chamber filled with brilliant light. The first sensation was like having my thoughts suddenly echoed back to me from a completely different perspective. I could feel Lyanna's consciousness touching mine, alien, yet somehow familiar. Her mind felt like a vast crystal cathedral, with thoughts organized in perfect geometric harmony. Through our connection, I sensed her experiencing my mind for the first time. To her, my human consciousness felt like a flowing river, chaotic but full of life and constant motion. Where her thoughts were precise and crystalline, mine were organic and adaptive. "This is remarkable," I heard her voice in my mind rather than my ears. "Your thoughts create patterns I've never imagined possible." "Your mind is beautiful," I responded the same way. "It's like being inside a living work of art." But as our connection deepened, we began to encounter problems. The fundamental structures of our consciousness were so different that they seemed to clash when they tried to merge. I felt Lyanna's crystal-precise thoughts trying to impose order on my chaotic human creativity, while my emotional spontaneity seemed to cause painful feedback in her structured mind. "Something is wrong," Elder Zexthane announced, his voice cutting through the growing discomfort. "The bonding energy is becoming unstable." Through the crystal, I could feel our mental connection starting to tear rather than merge. The pain was incredible, like having my thoughts shattered into fragments. Lyanna's colors flickered wildly as her own consciousness fought to maintain coherence. "We have to stop," High Chancellor Vexandra declared. "If this continues, both their minds will be destroyed." "No," I said aloud, struggling to maintain focus through the pain. Through our damaged connection, I could sense Lyanna's determination matching my own. "We're not failing because we're incompatible. We're failing because we're trying to make our minds the same instead of letting them be different together." "What do you mean?" Lyanna asked, her mental voice strained. "Stop trying to organize my thoughts like yours," I told her. "And I'll stop trying to make your thoughts flow like mine. Instead, let's see what happens when crystal structure and organic flow work together instead of fighting each other." It was risky. Instead of forcing our consciousness to merge into a single pattern, we allowed them to remain distinct while creating bridges between them. My chaotic creativity began to flow along her crystal structures, creating new patterns that were part organic, part geometric. Her precise logic began to guide my emotional responses, giving them structure without destroying their spontaneity. The change was immediate and extraordinary. Instead of one merged consciousness, we became something entirely new, two minds working in perfect harmony while maintaining their individual nature. Through her crystal clarity, I could process information with precision I'd never achieved. Through my organic adaptability, she could think in ways that broke free from traditional Zephyrian limitations. The bonding crystal blazed with light unlike any the chamber had ever seen. The ancient symbols on the walls began to shift and change, creating new patterns that combined traditional Zephyrian geometry with flowing organic designs. "Impossible," Elder Zexthane whispered. "The bonding chamber itself is being transformed." As our successful bonding stabilized, alarms suddenly began sounding throughout the palace. Through the chamber's crystal windows, I could see explosions lighting up the sky above the capital city. "We're under attack!" A guard burst into the chamber, his colors flashing urgent warnings. "Unknown ships have breached the planetary defense grid!" Through our new mental link, Lyanna and I instantly shared information. Her royal education gave me immediate knowledge of Zephyrian military capabilities and political situation, while my human perspective allowed her to see tactical possibilities that traditional Zephyrian thinking might miss. "The Void Reapers," she said aloud, her colors shifting to combat patterns. They're the only ones who could have broken through our defenses so easily. Elder Zexthane's ancient body went rigid with fear. The Void Reapers? But they were driven back decades ago. They must have been waiting for an opportunity, Lear-Anna realized. The controversy over our bonding, the political upheaval. They saw it as a sign of weakness. Through the palace's crystal communication network, we received reports of the attack. The Void Reapers were an ancient enemy of the Zephyrian Empire. Beings of living darkness who fed on light and energy. Their ships were attacking the crystal cities, draining the light from Zephyrian buildings and leaving dead zones in their wake. The royal family must be evacuated, High Chancellor Vexandra declared. Princess, we need to get you to the secure bunkers immediately. No, Lear-Anna said firmly. My place is with our defenders. Princess, you're not trained for combat. But I am, I interrupted. Through our bond, Lear-Anna now had access to my military training from Earth's colonial defense forces. And she has knowledge of Zephyrian defense systems that I can use in ways no one has ever tried before. What happened next still amazes me when I think about it. Lear-Anna and I, working as a perfectly synchronized team through our mental link, took command of the palace's defense systems. But instead of using them in traditional Zephyrian patterns, we applied human tactical creativity to alien technology. Where Zephyrian defenders tried to meet the Void Reapers head-on with overwhelming force, we used misdirection and asymmetric tactics. I provided the strategic thinking while Lear-Anna's royal access codes gave us control of systems throughout the capital. We turned the city's decorative light displays into a weapon, creating blinding flashes that disrupted the Void Reaper's darkness-based sensors. We rerouted power from non-essential systems to create focused energy beams that could penetrate their shadow shields. Most importantly, we coordinated the defense in real time through our mental link, adapting instantly to changing battlefield conditions. The turning point came when we realized the Void Reapers' main weakness. They fed on light and energy, but they couldn't handle information. Working together, we turned every crystal formation in the capital into a massive data transmission system, flooding the Void Reapers' consciousness-draining abilities with so much raw information that they couldn't process it all. The attack force retreated within hours, but not before their leader sent a final message that chilled everyone who heard it. This was merely a test, crystal beings. We have learned much about your new alliance. We will return when the time is right to claim what we desire. In the aftermath of the battle, as the capital city worked to repair the damage, the Royal Council gathered for an emergency session. But the political landscape had completely changed. Instead of questioning our unusual bonding, they were now asking how they could replicate our success. Princess Lear-Anna, Human Marcus, Elder Zexthane began, what you accomplished today has implications far beyond royal tradition. Your combined capabilities saved not just the capital, but potentially our entire world. The Void Reapers will return, another council member added. And when they do, they'll come in greater numbers. We need to understand how to defend against them. Through our mental link, Lear-Anna and I shared a moment of perfect understanding. We had become something new, something that combined the best of both our species while creating capabilities that neither possessed alone. The answer isn't just in our bonding, I said. It's in what our bonding represents. Humans and Zephyrians working together can accomplish things that neither species could achieve alone. You're proposing an alliance, High Chancellor Vexandra realized. More than that, Lear-Anna added. We're proposing a new model for how different species can cooperate, not by one conquering the other or by trying to make everyone the same, but by celebrating our differences and finding ways to make them work together. Over the following weeks, as our proposal was debated and refined, Lear-Anna and I worked to understand our new capabilities. Our bonded consciousness allowed us to process information in ways that seemed magical to outside observers. But we knew it was simply the result of human adaptability combining with Zephyrian precision. More importantly, we began teaching others. Carefully selected Zephyrians and humans worked together on smaller-scale cooperation projects. While none achieved the full consciousness bonding that Lyrana and I shared, they developed working relationships that produced remarkable innovations in technology, art, and strategic thinking. The first human Zephyrian joint colonies were established within a year. These settlements, scattered across the border worlds, became laboratories for interspecies cooperation and testing grounds for new defensive strategies against the inevitable return of the Void Reapers. 3 years later, when the Void Reapers finally launched their full-scale invasion, they discovered an alliance they hadn't anticipated. Human creativity and Zephyrian technology had been combined in ways that created entirely new forms of defense. The rigid battle plans the Reapers had developed to counter traditional Zephyrian tactics were useless against the adaptive strategies of the human-Zephyrian alliance. The war that followed was brutal and costly, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Void Reapers had based their invasion on the assumption that the Zephyrian Empire was static and predictable. They couldn't adapt to an enemy that constantly evolved and improvised. But perhaps the most important victory wasn't military at all. In the decades that followed, the human-Zephyrian alliance became a model for interspecies cooperation throughout the galaxy. Dozens of other races joined the Confederation, each bringing their own unique capabilities to the collective defense and growth of civilized space. As for Lyrana and me, we continued to serve as ambassadors and coordinators for the alliance. Our bonded consciousness became the template for new forms of interspecies cooperation, though each pairing developed its own unique characteristics based on the species involved. On quiet evenings, when our official duties were finished, we would often return to that crystal garden where we had first talked privately. The garden had grown over the years, incorporating both crystalline and organic elements in patterns that would have been impossible before our bonding. "Do you ever regret your choice?" I asked her one evening as we watched the sunset paint rainbows through the hybrid crystal plant formations. Her colors shifted to the warm patterns I had learned meant deep contentment. "Never," she said. "You offered me the chance to become something more than what I was. That's the greatest gift anyone can give another being, even if it meant giving up a traditional Zephyrian life." "Marcus," she said, her mental voice filled with amusement and love, "look around you. We didn't give up anything. We created something entirely new." She was right. The world we had built together was neither purely human nor purely Zephyrian, but something that combined the best of both while transcending the limitations of either. It was a future that neither of our species could have achieved alone, but together we had made it reality. And in the end, that's what love really is. Not finding someone who fits perfectly into your existing life, but finding someone with whom you can build something completely new. Something that honors both of your pasts while creating a future that neither of you could have imagined alone. As the stars came out over our hybrid world, Lyrana and I began planning for tomorrow's challenges. Somewhere in the deep space between galaxies, new threats were always emerging. But we faced them together, human and Zephyrian, chaos and order, creativity and precision, all working in perfect harmony. And we knew that whatever came next, we would meet it not as separate beings trying to merge, but as partners who had learned to create something greater than the sum of their parts. In a universe full of ancient enemies and impossible challenges, that was the most powerful force of all.